Hey, this is Brian Jackson. I'm an Ableton-Certified Trainer and instructor here at 343 Labs. So today we're going to talk about audio interfaces, why you need one and when you should get one, and how to use them. This video is for anybody that just bought an audio interface or is thinking about purchasing an audio interface. So the purpose of this video is to lay down a foundation for anybody that wants to record at home, and we'll be using this video to form the basic building blocks of future videos that we're going to do in this series. So an audio interface is simply a device, used to be called a sound card, but now it's going to be something like this that connects via USB most likely, and the whole point of it is to get audio in and out of your computer. So pretty much all of the ones nowadays are going to have analog to digital converters, so you can get a microphone signal or your guitar or something like that into your computer, and then digital to analog converters would simply just make it so that when you play it back, you can hear it on your speakers or your headphones. So there's two basic reasons that you're going to want an audio interface. The most obvious is if you're going to be recording anything from outside of your computer into your computer, like a guitar, synthesizer, or microphone. So if you're doing vocals or if you have a bunch of hardware synths, you're going to need an audio interface to get good quality recordings into your DAW. Now, some people only really work with the plugins in their DAW, and that's fine. And when you play it back, this will give you more control over your monitoring level, better connections to speakers, and generally speaking, it's going to be higher quality and better workflow than just using the built-in audio out on your Mac or PC. Okay, so let's go ahead and get this hooked up. I'm going to take the standard old school USB cable, plug it in, and it will light up. And so what am I looking at here? On this one, on the back, I have a bunch of connections, and then on the front, I have a bunch of connections. So what are these? Well, on the front, I have what are known as combi jacks, which let me plug in a mic cable, an XLR cable, or an instrument cable, which would be a standard 1/4-inch cable. And I can choose between those different inputs to send those different signals to my DAW. Also on the front here, I have an output for headphones. And then on the back, I have outputs where I can go to speakers or to some other outboard gear. And then this one has this nice volume knob right on the top, so I can easily control the volume going to my speakers while I have a separate volume going to my headphones. So one of the main reasons that a lot of people realize they need an audio interface is when they want to record something with a microphone, probably most commonly vocals, but it could be some other source. So let's go ahead and look at connecting a mic. So I have this one right here, and I have the cable for it right here. And then on the front, all I have to do is plug it in. Okay, so now that we have our mic plugged in, we need to make sure that we're actually getting signal into the interface and then from the interface into our DAW. So different DAWs are going to work a little differently, but let's first talk about what's going on with this interface since it's a pretty standard way of working. So if I look on the front here, I'm going to have a gain knob of some sort. Occasionally, the audio interface will have digitally controlled preamps, but these smaller ones are always going to have an actual physical knob on them. I'd have my headphones plugged in at this point. When you have a microphone on in the room, you want your speakers muted so you don't get a feedback loop. So you are going to need to be using your headphones when you're recording with a microphone. Now, this particular microphone does not require phantom power, which is usually labeled as plus 48V, and that's because this is a dynamic microphone. If you have a condenser microphone, it will not work unless you turn on the 48V, and this is different if you have a USB microphone. All that stuff just kind of happens for you automatically. Okay, so let's see if we're actually getting a signal into the audio interface. I'm going to bring the mic over here, and then as I talk into it, I actually have an indicator on this particular interface. Some of them will look different or have something similar to this. And then looking in the DAW, I will see a level coming in. Now, I want to have a good signal. I don't want to be clipping. I don't want to be distorting. And I also don't want to be recording so low that I'm just picking up a bunch of noise. Now, this particular mic, it's pretty much almost impossible for me just talking to actually clip the microphone. Now, at the preamp, I need to make sure I'm not bringing that in too hot because I could distort or clip at the preamp. So in this case, it's pretty low level. If I look in the DAW, if I have it record armed, I can just keep turning this up until I actually have a good signal. So one thing that I should point out with a popular microphone like this or this style of mic it is not uncommon that you're going to have to turn the gain up a lot higher than you think you would because they're not very sensitive. And these preamps don't have a ton of gain, so keep in mind that bus-powered audio interfaces sometimes aren't going to be ideal, but if you use things right, you can still get a good signal and get a good recording. Okay, so you're getting signal at your audio interface, and for some reason it's not showing up in your DAW. There's a couple things that could be going on here, but the first thing you should check is that you actually have your audio interface set up as the input in your DAW. Now, each one's going to do this a little different, but usually it's going to be found in the preferences, and there you would set your audio engine to the interface that you actually have connected to your computer. Okay, so the first thing you're going to need to do after your preferences are set up is tell your DAW which track you actually want to record onto. Now again, different DAWs handle this differently, but usually you just need to record arm that channel and then you'll start seeing a signal coming in. So let's go ahead and do that right now. So once you actually arm the track that you want to record onto, you should see a signal. But there is another step, which is you might also have to set it to a specific input. Right now I'm going into input 1. So in the DAW, I would need to tell that track to come in on input 1. So over here in live, I can see I have external in and input 1, which is working. Now, if I hopped over to this track, which has input 2 set, even if I record arm it, I'm not going to see a signal because I don't have anything connected to input number 2 on this audio interface. Okay, so let's do a quick recording. I'm going to make sure I have the correct track record armed, and then I'm going to bring the mic back over here in front of me. So I'm going to go ahead and record myself talking for a sec. This is me talking through this microphone into Ableton Live through this audio interface. Okay, so let's do a quick recap. I have a microphone connected to my audio interface. My audio interface is connected to my computer. In my DAW, I have the preferences set up so it recognizes this audio interface, and then I'm making sure I'm getting signal at the interface and in the DAW by selecting the correct input that corresponds with the actual physical connection, and I have that track record armed. So all DAWs are going to have some sort of buffer setting. So why is there a buffer? The buffer is there to allow the computer to do tasks in the background. So the lower the buffer, the harder it has to work, the less latency. The larger the buffer, the more plugins you can run, but then also the more latency you have. Okay, so let's say that you're not using a microphone and you want to record a synthesizer or drum machine. Now, this particular synth is only mono out, so I only need one cable, and then I can plug that into my instrument in or line in, depending on the specific device you have, and it's going to be the same process. When I play some notes, I just want to make sure that I set the gain, and unlike when working with a microphone, we can have our speakers on because we're not worried about feedback loops at this point. So unlike most microphones that don't have a volume control on them except for, say, a USB podcasting mic, I now have two places where I can control the gain or the volume. I have the output of the synth and I have the input on the audio interface. So you want to have this set up in such a way that you're not sending it in really hot and clipping into here and then just turning this preamp down, because then you're going to get a distorted signal. In the reverse, I also don't want to have this turned really far down and then turn this all the way up. Otherwise, I'm going to be amplifying a lot of noise. So just like with the microphone, we do want to be looking at the level coming into the DAW. So I can go ahead and play some notes here, and then I want to adjust this so I'm not seeing any clipping at the interface, and then I can bring this up or turn this down so that I have a good level coming in. Now in this case, it doesn't need to be up too high. You just want to make sure it's not clipping and that it's not super low, and use your ears to make sure that it sounds good to you. So generally speaking, the level you're looking for is one that's not too high and not too low. As long as you're avoiding distortion, assuming you don't want distortion, and definitely as long as you're avoiding amplifying a lot of noise, then you're going to have a good signal. Now, the only real problem with bringing in a very low signal, even if it sounds good, is that the waveform is going to be super tiny and it might be difficult to edit later on. Okay, so you'll notice here that I plugged into input 2, I took the microphone out of input 1, and then here in the DAW I have input 2 selected on a different track from where I recorded my voice earlier. So I'm just going to go ahead and play some notes, make sure again that my level's good, and then I'm going to hit record. It's simple as that. Okay, so let's do a quick recap. I have the master volume out here on my synth, which is connected into my audio interface. I have a gain knob for the input to the interface, and then I'm going to have an actual meter showing me my signal in my DAW. I just want to make sure that it's not too high or too low so that I'm not clipping and I'm not amplifying a bunch of noise. So as you saw today, using your audio interface to record a microphone and a synthesizer are very similar in that we need to make sure that we watch our levels at every step of the process. Having a good understanding of your audio interface is going to better set you up as your studio grows over time. I hope you found this video helpful. This is Brian Jackson from 343 Labs in New York City. For more information on our courses in person in New York City, in Berlin, or online, go to 343labs.com. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.